charity that you'd like to get involved with? And the business just started growing right after that. I mean, we went through so many struggling years, but I mean, a direct correlation to that. So I consider that to be a big part of the business's growth and a big change in my life. And so that's where I spent, a lot of my time is, teaching Sunday school and getting involved with certain charities and stuff like that. And then started rekindling my golfing experience, and that was a whole...
That's a dynamic story of tithing that a lot of people should hear. I think we're all churchgoers to one extent or another, and some are a little heavier than others, but showing that what happened, a turning point, was really the tithing, and individually. Tell us, take us back now, and take me back to when you were 5 or 6 years old, and what do you remember about Lakewood Country Club, if anything at all, about that time? So we want to jump back from maybe when you were 30-something, and then take me back to when you were 5 or 6 years old, maybe kindergarten, up from there, your first introduction or memories of Lakewood Country Club with your dad.
Well, growing up on Bates Road, we were always close in the neighborhood, as every kid is. Growing up in your neighborhood, you knew everybody. And we had a family across the street from us that were members of Lakewood Country Club, the Paynes, Bob and Clarice Payne. And they had 2 daughters, Geraldine and Chris. And they were avid golfers. And I didn't really know a lot about golfing because I was probably 5 or 6 at the time. And I think my dad, well, not think, at the time I didn't know, but later found out, my dad was a member of Columbia Hills. And he had joined Columbia Hills in 1950 and was there for a number of years. And then he had joined, because of Bob Payne, he decided to join Lakewood Country Club. And so,
What would have been when, Jim? Like
1950, 52 maybe, we joined, well, my parents joined Lakewood Country Club. And my earliest memories were getting in the car on usually Tuesdays, because that was ladies' days, and driving to Lakewood Country Club with the Paynes, with Mrs. Payne and their daughters, and we'd all get in a convertible and we'd drive out to Lakewood Country Club. And I remember it being the longest drive of my life because the only highway, there was no 90, and it was just Detroit Road. But in Rocky River back in those days, once you got past Clegg Road, it was wilderness. It was all farms, it was all orchards and tomato farms and whatever. And so we would drive down Detroit Road. Now there were no traffic lights, but it would just go forever. It just seemed as a kid. And so I used to think, where are we going? Why are we driving this long? And we'd finally turn the corner at Bradley Road, and we'd know that's where the Lakewood Country Club was. And you go down Bradley, and I remember all the trees had grown over Bradley Road. So there were big trees on both sides of the road, and it was like going through a tunnel all the way down Bradley. They were just big old trees. And we arrived at Lakewood Country Club, and not really sure what was going on at the time, but we would have a Tuesday was an event day always. The women would play golf, and the kids would be entertained or entertain themselves at Lakewood Country Club. So it was a day we always looked forward to. Ladies' Day meant that my mom would, drop us off at the pool, tell us what time we were to meet her at the clubhouse, and behave and warn us and threaten us, and then she would disappear, not really knowing where she went. The old clubhouse at the entranceway was my memory, but the pool was way down on the property. It was out in the middle of nowhere, it just seemed. And so she'd drive us down there and drop us off, but once she did that, she'd drive back to the clubhouse at the entrance by Bradley, and she'd park her car there, and then we had to find our way back to the clubhouse. And that was kind of scary when I was a kid, is trying to find my way all the way down this property, and how am I going to find this clubhouse, and then how am I going to find my mom? But at first I didn't really care because we swam and we had games and we played cards and we did so many things. And then 4 o'clock, my sister or my brother would say, hey, it's 4 o'clock, we got to go get Mom or whatever. And they'd leave, and then I'd have to find my way down there, or I'd go first. But my earliest recollections of Lakewood were that, just starting out as a family, enjoying the pool, as kids, meeting other kids. The friendships that we made as kids growing up in Lakewood were tremendous, and that was our summer. Every summer was Lakewood Country Club and the kids we met, and I can remember going down to the clubhouse, and we'd always go to the front porch, and it was a wooden building and a wooden porch, and the ladies' room was on the left side of the clubhouse, and there was stairs going up. They put them up in the attic, I think. And I never went up there, but we would go up to the stairs and, go, Mom, Mom, and just about every mother in the club would stick their head down there and see who it was, and then they'd pass it on whose child was down there calling. And there was a lady who worked here named Anna, and she was I think she was German, big German woman. And she had gray hair and ponytail and wore glasses, and she'd come downstairs, and she was an attendant in the ladies' locker room. And she'd come downstairs and not yell at us or anything else, but she'd say, Jimmy, come on over here. Why don't you sit over here on the porch, and I'll go get you something special. And she'd come down with chips and a basket of chips and pretzels and a Shirley Temple or something, and give it to me on the porch. And she knew that would keep me busy till my mom was ready to go and changing her clothes and playing cards or whatever she was doing up there. And so that was the earliest memories.
Anything else special about that old clubhouse that you remember?
Oh, that was I got it. The clubhouse it seemed massive. Now, as a child, it's going to seem big, but I don't know if it was that big. But I remember the ladies' locker room was on the left side of the building as you faced it. On the right side, towards which is now number 10, where the very end was the men's locker room. And I remember going to see my dad, which kids were not allowed in the locker room. We'd do the same thing. Instead of going up to the stairs to yell for our mother, we'd go yell down the stairs for our father. Well, we got no response down there, so I didn't get down there much. But you could go down the stairs, and to the left was it was like a pub. And it was a little small room, and it was probably 15 by 15, and at most, maybe 12 by 12. And there was a guy named Joe the chef. And Joe would come out with his big chef hat on, and he'd have his white apron on, and he would treat us like we were special. And we'd go down there for lunch, and he'd make up a cheeseburger and a Boston cooler for us. He would bring out balloons and tell us jokes, and he was just a really great man. He was just such a nice guy. The clubhouse on the main floor, again, kids weren't really allowed in there. We were allowed on the porch. We were allowed out front. They had a putting green out front, and we'd have putting contests, and it was a big putting green. But inside the clubhouse, special events, like for the Christmas party or something, we got to go in the dining room, or with the parents on a special event, we'd get to go to dinner there. And they'd have all kinds of, much like they do today, they'd have all kinds of things for the kids at Christmas time, and they'd have, magicians and people playing music and gifts and all that. We got to sit with Santa and all the other things. It was a tradition that, through my whole life, it's always been at Lakewood Country Club. But in that clubhouse, they had a porch off the back that ran much like Westwood's did, long patio. And you could overlook which at that time was the number 1 hole, which is now number 10. And we'd overlook the hole, and I thought that was so cool because you could sit up there and like a seagull on a perch. You could see the whole course, and it was such a neat feeling. The clubhouse was elegant but old. It was an old farmhouse, and all the floors creaked wherever you walked, and so you didn't sneak in the clubhouse. And we tried that as kids every once in a while. We'd leave the pool and we'd sneak down to the clubhouse, and David Reddrop and Jack Fince and I, these were old members. We'd sneak around the clubhouse and try to explore. And somebody would stop us every step of the way. But they wouldn't yell and scream. They, what are you guys doing? No, you need to be up to the pool. Let me show you the way to the front door. And, But it was a neat building. And I just remember the pro shop was far away. And I can remember walking up to the pro shop, and they had a hedge all along number 10. Again, number 1. And there was a hedge from the clubhouse to the pro shop. And you'd walk along there, and the smell of that hedge just smelled so good in the summertime. And I remember walking up, and there was a hawk that came out of nowhere. And I must have gone by a nest or something. And this hawk came after me. And I was probably 8 years old at the time. And swept down on me, and I looked, and I went like this, and I ducked and swatted it away, and I ran a little bit, and it came down at me again, and I stopped, I went down to the ground, and chased it back, and tried to throw something at it, and this would happen all the way up number 10, trying to dodge this hawk. And I get up there, and by the pro shop, because that was at the end of the hole, and Carl Bimbutel, which was a pro, he and Joe Najat, who was the assistant pro at the time, were there, and they were laughing their heads off because they had got to see this whole event of me being attacked by this hawk, and they got a lot of pleasure out of it. But those are probably my earliest memories, and that probably the best thing I ever accomplished at the early years at Lakewood Country Club. I won a trophy for golfing in 1955. So I was 6 years old, and I always kept it on my dresser. It was about this big. It was a brass trophy. And it said, to Jimmy Manco, 1955, champion. I had no idea what I was a champion of or why I got it. I later found out I shot a 29 on number 1.
Wow.
So that was the first sign, okay, that I could be a champion, but I had no business playing golf. I think they gave trophies just about anybody for anything to encourage you. But I just didn't get it, and so for a 29, I got first prize. At 6 years old, I was probably the only 6-year-old that was in the tournament at the time, but I qualified.
That's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
Back in those days, Jim, do you remember going to the clubhouse with your mom and dad and your family to dine? And was that a big deal back in those days?
Oh yeah. We dining was big for us, and but again, in those days, Lakewood Country Club, there were so many events for families, but not a lot. I mean, when it came to formal dining and all the other things, we'd come out here on a maybe a Sunday or maybe a Thursday night, a special occasion, and we'd have dinner. But most of the time, my dad was here to play golf, and my mom would play golf once a week. That was it. She was home with the kids the whole time. So she was a great golfer, and he was a great golfer, and that was it. But the clubhouse was much more formal. And you didn't have kids running through the clubhouse or anything else. Well, I guess much like it would be today. They were at the pool. And other than lunches and stuff like that, that was it. So we didn't, when we did go out to dinner, we went to Westwood Country Club a couple of times. I remember eating there. And I kept wondering, why aren't we members of Westwood? It's right across the street from where we live. We got to go all the way out to Lakewood. But I later learned the difference between a good golf course and the differences. And so, yeah, we came to Lakewood rarely, but when we did, there were memorable moments. And that's when I first met Bernie, was at one of those dinners. And actually, it was I think it was like, it had to be in the early 60s. And I'm not really sure what year it was. But actually, it might have even been the late 50s. But when he came to Lakewood Country Club, I was probably 10 years old. He came and he walked in and he was wearing a red vest and black pants and a cummerbund around it, and carrying the tray. And he came out like he was walking on air. And he was the first black man I'd ever really seen. Growing up in Rocky River, there were no blacks. And I remember everybody's eyes were just, all the kids, we were just like, who is this man? What's, we didn't know what to think. And the moment he opened his mouth and said something to us, the moment we fell in love with him, he was and is such a great guy. He always smiled, and it wasn't one of those people that really didn't want to be here to put on the fake smile, because he really enjoyed what he did. And it didn't matter what he did or who he did it with. He always put the best energy and the effort into his job and the people around him, making sure that they were genuinely comfortable or happy. And he was just a bright light, and one of the brightest lights that I can remember at Lakewood Country Club. My mom would tell stories how he would dance with, a lot of the men didn't want to dance, and the women would want to dance. And so Bernie would dance with them, and he had the dance moves. And she said he was, he knew the latest dances, and he'd teach them the mashed potato or the jerk or whatever, whatever the latest dances. He knew it, and he could teach the group of them. It was almost like the original line dancer, and he would teach all the women. And they had a lot of events out here, and I remember them coming home after, it might have been one of the country stores, which, again, had gone on forever. And I remember my mom coming home one night, and